Ready, set, go. Principal Chief Sneed.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Honored to be here.
I and Caleb would agree. I think I'm grateful that you would take the time out of your busy schedule to sit down and have a conversation with us about recovery and some things that are happening on the reservation, and look forward to hearing from you what you have to share.
Well, I appreciate the invitation. It's always great to be here.
He's been talking you up for months, man. He has.
Yeah, well, what?
Almost a year.
At least 6 months. No, when we first started, I mentioned the chief coming on.
Yeah.
So just to get everybody loosened up a little bit here and break down any kind of barriers we may have. Chief, is it true? Now I'm not saying
I don't know.
I
don't know where he's going.
I've got your back. I've got your back on this. I've got your back on this. This is good. Is it true that you sometimes wear makeup?
Yes, sometimes that's true.
Okay. Now the reason I asked that is because everybody, I have makeup too as well. See, so
If you're going on camera, you have to have it.
exactly. Thank you. All right. Good. Anyways, I just wanted to make that point.
And I wanted to be clear, when you're going on camera, sometimes you need it.
Today the camera is way at the end of the table. Way at the end of the table. You have nothing to worry about. So, in conversations, there's a lot of stuff going on, both in our community, Jackson County, Swain County, in regards to substance use and mental health disorders. And, one of the things that, like, the way that the media tends to work and the way that our minds kind of tend to work is that we always tend to, like, focus on and kind of shed light on some of the negative stuff that's happening in our community. You hear about the overdose deaths, and you hear all about the epidemic that's taken place nationwide. And so I guess one of the things that I personally wanted to ask you to begin with was just like, I want to know, like, some of the things that are working specifically on the reservation. Like, what are you guys doing that you're seeing, like, some positive results from? Because I think that the wave is shifting. Knowing you guys for, like, a couple years now, year and a half, working with you guys very closely, like, we're seeing a shift in some of the things that were previously taking place. If you could maybe, like, talk a little bit.
Well, I think it's important to touch on, something you just said in your comments, nationwide, right? Because in my travels, almost without fail, a question that I get when someone, well, where are you from? Well, Cherokee, North Carolina. Well, tell me about that place. Well, it's an Indian reservation. First question you get, well, what's the drug problem like? I said, it's the same as it is everywhere else. We're not unique in that way, right? It's the same as it is everywhere else. I think where the shift is, and I agree with you because, and in fact, I was just discussing this with somebody yesterday, saying, I think that there is, like with every epidemic that comes along, there's that initial spike. There's kind of the shock that comes after it initially hits, and then as human beings, we spring into action, right, to try to deal with it. And I think the biggest shift that's come in this particular epidemic that should have come years ago, when we talk about substance abuse disorder, is that we're dealing with human beings. And that shift should have come a long time ago. We have been wrapped up in a mindset and an ideology in this country for well over 50 years. I think Richard Nixon was the first president to declare an official war on drugs. Mm-hmm. But it goes even further back than that. Anslinger, when he started I think what went on to become the ATF or DEA, it was all about demonizing the people who were associated with substance abuse. And the bigger picture is that we have to begin to address, and you mentioned in your comment as well, mental health. All right, so the issues of why do people use? Nobody starts out or sets out to be addicted, right? And so digging deeper and asking the questions of other human beings, what happened in your life? Help me understand your story. Help me understand where you've come from so that I can better understand how I can help you. I think that's the shift that has come, and it's the shift that we've needed in this country for at least the last 30 years. I think the first, when Nixon made his declaration, that was a shock and awe declaration as well, right? And it set a mindset in this country that if you are addicted, you're a bad person and you need to be punished. And the response from the powers that be and the authorities is that the response always has to be punitive. we know that doesn't work, right? So we're the most industrialized country on the planet, and we have more people in prison than any other country on the planet. It doesn't work. And so the mindset shift that has needed to come. And I think that the reason it has come is because initially with the pill epidemic and then the shift to heroin, it has impacted middle-class white America. When it was an intercity problem, when it was an African-American problem or a Hispanic problem or even a Native American problem, it's not our problem. But, addiction, it knows no boundaries, right? And when this impacted working middle-class Americans and their kids, all of a sudden, you heard a different narrative coming from the powers that be. I remember being at an opioid summit in Asheville several years ago, and it was put on by the U.S. Attorney's Office. And all of these people, it was interesting to me because I'm just kind of sitting back taking this all in. And it was interesting to me, U.S. attorneys, DEA agents, FBI agents, all of these keynote speakers who were coming up were all the same mantra, we can't arrest our way out of this. And I'm sitting there thinking, that's all you've tried to do for the last 50 years. I'm glad it shifted. And I think we're in a good place now where we can actually see some real change.
Chief, I want to ask you, if you don't mind sharing with us, how have you been affected personally?
Well, my youngest son, my wife and I have 5 children, 2 grandchildren, 1 on the way, and our youngest son, went through a period about 3 years worth of addiction, and it was heartbreaking. It was devastating to our family. Sleepless nights, lots of tears, lots of heartache. Thankfully he's in a good place now. I mean, that was, but that took sending him to treatment 3 different times. And just never knowing from day to day, coming home, what to expect. Mm-hmm. And there's just that uncertainty and that anxiety. So so you go through your whole day dealing with everything that you have to deal with in the workplace and with the job, and then you come home to just insanity, because you just never know what to expect. I mean, I remember him sneaking out like every night, coming back 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, and just being completely out of it, disoriented, and just unhinged.
How old is he?
He's 17 now.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. So he started really early too.
Yeah.
Wow. I was talking to Caitlin on the way up here, and you've just got such a body of work. Obviously, being in Marines, being a teacher, being in the vice chief's office. I mean, you've a pastor of a church for several years. You've been leading for so long by serving. What do you see, like, right now in the position that you're in? I seen the series that you done the other day. What was the point of trying to do that? Like, I understand you're trying to break down barriers and bring people in and open up these conversations and everything, but the 4-part series, and did you get to see any of those?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Sure. So I'm a firm believer that education and information really sets a bound up mind free. Right now, certainly there will always be. I did a talk yesterday with the Harris management team on leadership, and I said, listen, there will always be people on the fringe that you're not going to reach, to the far right or to the far left, but they're not the majority. I mean, they are a very small minority. They're usually very vocal and very opinionated, but they're not the majority. The majority of people are toward the center, and if you can get good information to them to start to change long-standing mindsets that exist. So, for example, the point that I made earlier about everything being punitive. I remember one time I was at a community club, and it's been a couple years ago, when I was in the vice chief's office, and at the end of the meeting, a tribal elder said, "Well, I tell you what, we need to lock up all these druggies." And I mean, it flew all over me, and I stood up and I said, "I'm going to address that." And I went on about a 20-minute, not a rant, but about a 20-minute discourse, and it was educational of why that doesn't work. And I said, at the end of the day, these are our sons and our daughters, husbands, wives, moms, dad. These are our community members. These are our family members, and we can't throw them away. And so my objective with all of the videos that we do is just simply that. I'm always constantly in educator mode. That's always my heart, is to educate and to equip. And so The point of the videos is hopefully to change people's minds. And I recognize that there will be those that will always disagree, that will always be oppositional, and I will probably never change their mind. But I also recognize that the majority of people are reasonable. And as I said, the truth always right down the middle.
Yeah.
It's never off to the fringes. It never is. And so if you speak to the middle, I think you're going to speak to the majority of the people in our community.
Yeah. And I think when you approach it with a kind of respectful, not like out of like, I'm trying to prove your side wrong, but just approaching it with like, hey, this is how I feel and this is why I feel this way, from a place of respect and from a place of honesty and compassion, it's more receptive. It's even for those kind of fringe ends of the spectrum that you spoke of to receive that message. It's not something that changes overnight either. No, it's by continuing the conversation, by sitting down and going in front of the schools and talking on a regular basis like you do, or having these podcasts on a regular basis and showing those different individuals who have been affected and having conversations. Eventually, we can all come together to like a common ground, regardless of what that is.
And to your point, I mean, in one of the ideas I put forward yesterday in my discussion on leadership was, I said, look, it is imperative that you listen as intently to your adversary as you do your allies. It's a very dangerous thing.
But people don't want to hear that.
But you need to, because your adversary knows something that you don't.
Yes.
Right.
And I know something that my adversary doesn't know. And to your point, if we can meet on the field of mutual respect, and I can respect you as another human being, knowing that we will go away from the conversation, there will be things that we still disagree on, but almost without fail, we will find commonalities that we agree on. And I think what tends to happen is we find that there are more things that we agree on than we disagree on. But that only comes from discourse. And, we mentioned earlier in our conversation, it's a great time to be alive. The technology we have at our disposal is phenomenal. It's amazing. Look what we're doing right here, right? This is great. But at the same time, you can use this technology in a very irresponsible manner to drive a greater wedge between people and to drive discourse and to drive, just stirring the pot and keeping things in chaos. But there has to be voices of reason on every issue, and certainly on this issue, because this issue impacts every family in the country. There's no one that hasn't been impacted by it.
Yeah. Have you always been a natural leader growing up?
I addressed that yesterday too. I said, people used to ask this, the age-old question: are leaders born or are they made? And of course, the answer is yes, right? It's both. I think everyone has the potential for leadership. And leadership can be developed, and there's a couple ways to learn it. You can go School of Hard Knocks, which is usually ego-driven and pride-driven, which in my 18, 19, 20s, in my time in the Marine Corps was very much ego-driven. And as you get knocked down multiple times and you figure out that, hey, I really don't know everything, and you start to pull back and go, this is painful. I'm going to start to listen to other people and maybe think before I act. And certainly think before I speak. But that was the School of Hard Knocks way of going about it. But I think everyone has the potential for leadership, but at the same time, leadership isn't for everybody. Leadership is a lonely place. Leadership can be a very painful place. Leadership will teach you that people that you think you can trust, you can't. Leadership teaches a lot of stuff about yourself too. I mean, because I think when you put yourself out there, and that's really what you're doing, you're making yourself very vulnerable, and you're putting yourself out there for everybody to have their opinion about you as well, and that's painful.
Yeah.
So
definitely vulnerable to criticism, but as long as you can accept that criticism and learn from it and apply it in a positive way and grow from it, I think it's crucial, man.
Do you mind sharing just a little bit of your story, Chief?
Which part?
in your early Wilder days, like.
Oh, well, gosh, I mean, I think my story is not much different than a lot of American kids that were growing up. I was born in the late 60s and grew up in the 70s. And I remember...
Looking good, by the way.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So
CrossFit.
Yeah.
So, I remember I've always been somebody who just observes. And I think it's interesting because... my names, Richard Gregory Sneed. So Richard means powerful leader, and Gregory means one who is watchful and alert. And my names kind of really fulfill kind of how I've turned out as a person. I always just kind of sit back and take things in, evaluate, assess, analyze, and then form an opinion, and then act. And I remember from a very young age, I remember observing that where I was living in New Jersey, my mom was on again, off again, single mom. And we lived in an apartment complex, and there was a whole pack of us kids who all ran around suburban New Jersey. You know, I was born in Cherokee, but mom and dad, I never knew my dad. They got divorced when I was just a baby. Mom took my sister and I to New Jersey. And I remember realizing that of all these kids in this apartment complex, nobody had a dad. I remember observing that. I'm like, nobody's got a dad, you know? And so I think that that really contributes to that brokenness of family. I think it's imperative, and it's not just my opinion. I mean, the data and the evidence bears it out, that, you know, a child raised in a two-parent home is going to fare better in life, you know, than one who is in a single family home. And I don't say that in judgment. My mom was a single mom for most of, you know, my years growing up, and she worked very hard. She worked and went to school and became a school teacher, and, you know, did phenomenally for the circumstances. But I think that certainly contributed to, you know, my early years of getting involved in you know, substance abuse and just, you know, wild behavior, because we were just a bunch of wild kids. You know, all of our moms were working, and we had all of this free time on our hands. So that really contributed to how I ended up back in Cherokee, because I got to the point where my mom couldn't do anything with me. I mean, you know, and I'd been to rehab once, and came out. I stayed clean for about 7 or 8 months, started using again, and they were going to send me to another rehab, and I was willing to go. I remember, you know, I had a counselor, the outpatient counselor that I saw on I think it was every other week. I was willing to go, and I thought I would go back to where I was before, which looked very much like a ski lodge. It was up in the mountains. It was kind of a cool place. But the next place they took me to, and I was only supposed to go for a refresher course for a week, and I get there, and it kind of looked like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I was looking for Nurse. I was looking for Nurse Ratched, you know. But I remember vividly walking through there, and my mom was with me, and we were going to meet with the counselors, and I was having a conversation with myself in my head, like, wow, this place is scary looking. I don't want to stay here, but you can do this, man. It's just a week. You can do this.
How old was you?
14.
Okay.
And
Wow.
and so we sit down and we meet with the counselors, and then okay, well, Mr. Sneed, we're going to go talk, and we'll be back shortly. Okay, so I'm sitting there making small talk with my mom, and they come back in. Well, Mr. Sneed, we think your problem's severe enough. You need to stay. I'm like, hey, I'm great. Got my bag. I'm ready to stay. A week. No, 6 weeks. And I remember saying, no, I'm not staying here 6 weeks. And even in all, you know, my craziness and everything else, I was always respectful to my mom. I never, ever talked back to my mom. You can call her right now. She'll tell you I never talked back to her. I was never disrespectful. And that was like the one time I said, no, I'm not doing it. And she said, well, Rich, I think you need to stay if they're professionals. And this was the days of tough love. You remember, you know, tough love? That was like, you know, you're going to do this. And so she said, well, either you go do this or you go live with your dad. And I didn't even know my dad. And I thought, she's not going to send me to live with my dad. I'm like, fine, I'll go live with my dad. All right, let's go. So we left, and we drove home, and she got on the phone and called my dad, and 3 days later, I was in Cherokee. So she wasn't kidding. It all turned out all right, though.
Right.
It's funny now.
Yeah.
It wasn't funny then. It wasn't funny at all then. It was heartbreaking for me then, but it all turned out okay.
I know we don't have a lot of time here, and there's so much I want to talk about. Like, you got anything?
I was gonna just ask about, you hit on like a valuable skill set, is that observational, to be able to kind of like sit back without reacting, sit back without responding, and kind of like assess what is taking place in front of you, whether it's as a leader or in the classroom or wherever it is. That's an extremely valuable skill that I learned at an early age myself through like work and retail sales and having to attend to customers and kind of see what was going on in the background as I was, but it sounded like it came natural to you as a young boy. Like, you vividly remember that nobody had a father figure in their household, and so like looking back now and knowing what you know now, how would you say how would you say the best way to like cultivate and kind of like groom that skill set would be for a young individual, specifically these days when they're all glued to the devices?
I think it's a greater challenge for young people now. You know, I grew up in a time where there were 3 TV channels, right? There was NBC, ABC, and CBS, And if you could get on UHF, you could get channel 13, and it was the public broadcast station, right? So you had 4 maybe. You had cartoons for an hour and a half after school, and then that was it. And you had 2 hours of cartoons on Saturday. Other than that, we were outside running around and we were engaging. There was a lot of human interaction. And now it's not real interaction. A text message is not human interaction. What we're doing right now is real interaction, you know, when we talk about shifting the mindset and shifting the culture, and that was something I talked to the group about yesterday, you know, people, we say in Cherokee all the time, we talk about our culture. And I ask people, I said, well, what does that mean? And they say, well, you know, our language. I'm like, well, that's part of it. What do you mean by our culture? Well, it's our traditional foods. Okay, that's part of it. Well, it's our customs and traditions. That's part of it. I said, I would submit to you that a culture is a value system. It's an intangible. And the foundation and really what it comes down to is how we treat one another as human beings, right? And so in this particular instance, there's a culture that surrounds substance abuse and addiction and how we treat people who are suffering with this, right? And the way that you change that mindset is you hear the human story. I mean, the human story is so powerful. You know, one of the things when I was teaching I used to do, and the way I kind of snuck it in with my students because it was mostly male students, and you can't say, hey guys, I'm going to let you listen to this story and it's really emotional, it's going to be, you know, it's going to make you feel real sensitive and all this, you know, was to say, guys, listen, in the day and age that we live in, where there's all this distraction and your attention span is probably 5 seconds long at a time, it's very important that you cultivate the ability to listen and to really hear. And in order to do that, you've got to block everything else out and you have to listen. So I would have them listen to stories on The Moth. I don't know if you're familiar with The Moth. It's an NPR broadcast. And it's just people telling their stories. And I mean, it's phenomenal. I come away from a story that I hear on The Moth, and sometimes I'm laughing, sometimes I'm crying, sometimes I'm just sitting there feeling like, oh my God, I just got run over by a bus, you know, and I'm blown away at what human beings go through, and they come out on the other side, and they're stronger, and and it just blows me away. But the power of story, that breaks down barriers, because you don't get to look at another human being in the face and listen to their story of their struggle and the adversity and how they came through that. You'll never see them the same way again. You can't. Mm-hmm. And so we do this thing where I could, you know, if someone is, well, look at, they're a drug addict. But if you hear their story, it changes everything.
Yeah.
Right.
That's one
That,
of
oh,
the...
sorry. No.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, that the whole time that you've been talking, I've been listening, and just, I guess my question for you is, you know, did you dream of being where you're at now? Like whenever you was young, before you know, the struggle, the addiction that you went through, before all that, like, did you dream of being in a leadership role? Because like I didn't know all that about you. I knew about your son. I knew that, but I never knew that personally about you. And it's just like, for me, like when I was in school and stuff, I was on, you know, Journalistic Leadership Council. Like I dreamed of doing something big for my community and whatnot. And then, you know, I struggled, but just seeing, you know, you persevered through the things that you went through. And now, you know, like you're serving people in so many different ways. You know, I just, what would you encourage one of the listeners who might be on here, you know, that feels like maybe they're in recovery, but they feel stuck, or they don't feel any importance, or they feel like they can't do anything, you know, like they're never going to be able to excel, or, you know, or be able to do what they used to dream about.
Sure. They don't have that confidence.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So there's two parts to the question. So the first part, did I ever dream of being here? I think always in my mind and in my heart, I always believed I had a purpose. I didn't know necessarily what that was,
Right.
but I always believed that I was destined to do something great. I've always believed that. They had no idea. I just knew, and I don't know why or how I knew that. I think maybe it was because, you know, my mom loved me a lot, you know, and so that helped me to know that I mattered and that I had purpose. Didn't know what the purpose was.
Right.
I just kind of knew, just always knew I was going to do something great. Didn't know what it was. And it blows my mind some days when, you know, like, for example, I called my mom and I said, I just wanted to tell you I just got done. I chaired a CDC meeting today down in Atlanta. And I said, I was sitting there thinking, there's all these people around the table, like these really high-ranking government officials, and I'm leading this meeting and directing the meeting. And then when it's all over, the deputy director of the CDC comes up to me. She goes, "Chief, you run a really good meeting. That was very efficient. Well done." I was like, "Thank you, ma'am. You have a great day." Or a couple of weeks ago, I'm sitting in Elizabeth Warren's office. Just after she texts me, Elizabeth Warren texts me. I'm sitting there. I'm getting text messages. "Hey, honey, look, Elizabeth Warren texts me." Those things like that I kind of have to slap myself every now and again, like, this is crazy. But I guess in response to your second question, how would I encourage somebody who's just feeling like, gosh, I've blown it, I've gone too far? Is failure's not final. Failure is just an opportunity for growth.
That's right.
And one of the things I used to say, every opportunity that I've had, and I've had multiple opportunities to speak to the entire staff of Cherokee Central Schools, elementary, middle, and high school, all at one time. And one of the things I always say when I get that opportunity is I say, please, 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 teach our kids how to fail. Now, that seems like an oxymoron, right? That's like,
No, it's
That's
survival,
good.
though.
We always
Yes.
say stuff like that. I mean, yeah.
you've got to learn how to deal with failure. Life is
Absolutely.
all about dealing with failure, bouncing back from failure. And the problem is, in the day and age that we live in now, when you fail, right, and we all will fail, there's a host of people waiting around with their devices to put your failure out there.
No.
Right.
Everybody sees it.
Right. So that, and think about it, it's a place of fear, because really what they're doing is I don't want the light to be shined on me, so I'm going to shine the light on this person who has failed. And it's a very dangerous thing. And then everybody kind of piles on, and I would say failure is not final. It's an opportunity for growth. Know this, you will fail, but it's an opportunity to say, okay, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? What can I do better the next
Right.
time?
Come on.
That's really all it is. And I mess up all the time. We all mess up all the time.
No, not you, Chief.
Yeah, but I think that the bigger issue, or the most important thing, I think, is to own it. When
Yeah.
I did that. That was me. I remember when I got busted on a urinalysis when I was in the Marine Corps. Not proud of that, but I did. And I remember when I got to work that morning, and I'd been out all night, and I was just trying to get through, because I'd only had about an hour of sleep, and we had formation, and then the platoon sergeant's like, all right, but fallout, carry the plan of the day. I'm like, good, so, oh, wait, come back, we got your analysis. I'm like, oh man, I knew I was busted. And I remember it took like 6 weeks. This is the 80s, so it took a lot longer. It's not like now, you fail a drug test now, it's coming back like in that minute, you failed. And about 6 weeks later, I come back from lunch and like, Sneed, report to the first sergeant. I'm like, I knew what it was. And I go up there and I knock on the door and, sir, Lance Corporal Sneed reporting his order. Get in here. I go in there, standing at attention. If you've ever seen Full Metal Jacket, the first sergeant of 1st Maintenance Battalion at Camp Pendleton in 1988 looked just like him. Acted just a little wiry guy, just yelling and screaming. And I remember, my wife hates it because I got a mind like a steel trap. I remember everything. I remember what he said. He was reading the charge sheet. On such and such a date, said named Marine did knowingly and willfully use cocaine. Suppose you're going to tell me some story about how somebody put something in your drink, huh? And I said, no, sir, I did it. What? I said, no, sir, I did it. Oh, well, sit down. I totally disarmed, because and in that moment I realized he probably, because at that time methamphetamine was just rampant in Southern California. I was out at Camp Pendleton, and there were Marines and sailors all over the place that were using methamphetamine. And I remember in that moment thinking, he's probably heard every excuse in the book. And it was probably refreshing for him to have somebody just say,
Yeah.
no, I did it. But that's just how I was raised. My mom and my dad both raised me that way. And, immediately his demeanor changed, and he was like, why'd you do it? Where was your head at? I'm like, I won't tell you what I said, but he's like, son, you're in a lot of trouble. And yes, sir, I'm aware of that. But when I had to go up for office hours and go up before the colonel, that first sergeant was right there advocating for me, because they could have kicked me out, and he was advocating for me, saying, sir, I think we got this one's salvageable. I think he's a good Marine. He messed up, Yeah, because back then they just throw you out, you're just out. But so I was very grateful for the opportunity to not get thrown out. But yeah, that was one of those things. Talk about a fall from grace, man. I was an honor grad out of boot camp. I was top dog. I was all gung ho and everything else, and I did something really stupid. you know, and it was there was some really harsh consequences for it. But when it happens, like, yeah, it was me. I did it. What are the consequences? I'm ready to accept that. So.
And grow from it.
Oh yeah.
We're getting short on time now. Chief, what I know a lot of times I see not just you but other some of our other leaders get attacked, and they say, "Well, y'all need to be doing this, and you need to be." I want to ask you, what do you need from us as community members? How can we make your job easier as far as this drug epidemic goes? And I know that we're trying to. We have this podcast. We have Res Hope. We're trying to. But what other things can people do that's listening?
Sure. I think that the most important thing is what you just said in your comments there. It's the attitude and the heart that you have, which is to say, what can I do?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I will say this, and I've said this for years, even when I was running for office, because this is not a new issue we're facing. I've said all along, it's like there's no silver bullet for this, guys. If there was, somebody would have fired it already.
Mm-hmm.
This is a community-wide problem. It's going to take a community-wide approach. One of the things that is counterproductive is when people have that as their opening salvo, right? What are you going to do to fix this?
Mm-hmm.
As if there were something we could do to snap our fingers to fix it. We are doing everything that we can do, and it's a holistic approach. There's no one thing, right? The one thing approach was lock them up.
That's right.
That's been the one thing approach for the last 50 years. Now, we're taking the approach of outpatient care, inpatient care, transitory care for the crisis stabilization unit for those folks who are like, I want to get help, but we don't have a bed for them yet. We can keep them in a secured facility, keep them under medical supervision, if that's pharmaceutically assisted treatment, to keep them from going into withdrawals, whatever that is. Our syringe assistance program, which is doing phenomenal work.
Mm-hmm.
I had and it's okay, I can share this. I took issue with the op-ed piece that was in our newspaper, in the One Feather, because it was, the opinion piece basically said, I disagree with the syringe assistance program because I feel like it's enabling people. And so I asked this gentleman who wrote it, I said, well, I have to ask you a question. I said, did you research the program? Well, no. Did you call the program and ask for some data on what are their benchmarks, what are their goals, and where are they in regard to achieving those goals? No. And I said, so you have an opinion. You formed an opinion based on limited information. I said, I'm not trying to beat you up on this. I've done that before. And I learned a long time ago that before I form an opinion, we all do it, right? Something happens, well, I'll tell you how I feel. I'll tell you what I think about that. Rather than do that, again, that's that thing you pull back, don't react. Let me get some more information. I said, it's fine. Everybody has an opinion, but it's more important to have an informed opinion. Because if you have an informed opinion, okay, oftentimes if I will pull back and get some information, my initial reaction to something is wrong a lot. Whereas when I get more information, I'm like, oh, okay, now I understand what you're doing. So I pointed out to this gentleman, I said, did you know, and this was 2 months ago, I said, did you know that last month our syringe assistance program referred 18 people to treatment? Did you know?
That's big time right there.
I said, did you know that our return rate last month, this was 2 months ago, was close to 75%. This last month it was 102%.
Wow.
102%. And they're seeing, I think they've got 154 clients. I said, these folks who need treatment are in daily contact with healthcare workers. I said, we are trying to not only deal with the addiction portion of this, but we're trying to do harm reduction there's an epidemic of Hep C. Nobody's talking about that, right? Because we look at the big issue and we go, oh, well, there's an opioid epidemic. Yeah, well, there's also a Hep C epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
And that endocarditis, the heart infection that's been killing so many people.
Right. Yeah, and to treat one person for Hep C, $85,000.
Yeah.
One person.
Yeah, we just had Tracy Wolf and Earl Birchfield and her team come and speak to our Res Hope group last week, the week before, about the Hep C epidemic, and it's like it's declared now as an epidemic in Cherokee. So that means there's so many. The rise of cases have grown so substantially, and so people don't like you said, they don't understand that. They just focus on the drug problem. They don't look at the other things that are going on, and then they don't understand how harm reduction is helping to get those people treatment or to help prevent it from happening in the first place, you know. Because I mean, it took me a while to understand what harm reduction was too, but now that I do know.
One of the biggest questions a lot of people have, Chief, is transitional housing and the rundown motels and stuff that's around our reservation that could be used for things like that. Have y'all talked about doing something with those or trying to get something?
Actually, just Tuesday in lands acquisition, there's actually a property we're looking at. I think it's I want to say it's like 60. I don't want to say what property it is because the price will go up. But yes, short answer, yes. We're looking at a motel, and it's actually a nicer one, but it's for sale, and I think it's 16 or 17 units. And our thought on it is we're building the women's transitional for moms and ladies coming out of treatment and into recovery over at the old children's home site, but we don't have anything for the men. So that was the discussion we had in lands acquisition the other day.
Okay.
So yes.
What are you thinking? We are going to have something for the men.
Yeah, we are. But
it's coming.
no, I was going to ask about emergency housing because that's a huge issue with. I know a lot of people coming into recovery is, one's employment, but then the other's housing. And I mean, we've had people that we have called us.
From
no
treatment.
Place to go.
Yeah.
Don't have any. I mean, and it's like we can't refer them to the Ernestine walking stick shelter because you have to have some kind of domestic going on. There's just, and sometimes it's just like I think there's like summertime or fall, and it's like, well, I don't know. I'm glad it's not freezing outside, but and that I hate. I didn't say that, but it sometimes that's how you have to look at it, and it's like. I don't know. I just wanted to ask about emergency housing because we used to have it, right?
We did, and so there's a couple issues, and this is one of those things where, if we're going to tell the truth about the issue, let's tell the truth about the issue. So a true transitional housing program, operated correctly, is supposed to operate this way. People come into the transitional housing. It's supposed to be a 6-month window, okay, and they're supposed to work closely with public health and human services, with social workers. They're supposed to work closely with the school system with the kids. But the other thing they're supposed to do is they are actually supposed to charge a small amount of rent. That rent is supposed to go into an account, right? And we're basically saving the money for them, right, in an escrow account. And at the end of 6 months, they have enough money at that point to pay first month, last month, down and deposit.
Right.
What has happened historically, and I'm not pointing fingers, this is just what has happened historically. In the past, someone would call an elected official, well, don't charge them. Well, you're not helping them. There's a program in place for a reason.
Right. To
follow the program.
Right.
So what ended up happening was you would have folks that would go into transitional housing, and they would never transition out of transitional housing. So then by following the program, that means every 6 months there should be an apartment or whatever opening up for somebody else to come into. We're supposed to be empowering people to get back on their feet. Right, we're supposed to be equipping them to get back on their feet. So we have tried repeatedly. Well, I didn't say that, you did. For the record.
Noted.
Now the chief's calling us.
that E word did not come out of my mouth. But we've looked at several different properties for the purpose of transitional housing. With the understanding, and I've said to other elected officials, if we do this, you cannot interfere. You've got to let this thing operate the way it's supposed to operate. If you truly want to help our people, you got to let the program run the way the program's supposed to run.
One of the things that we've got to have a conversation about a couple of times is whenever I got up to apply for the removal ride, and I was in my feelings, and I was kind of a little pissed off and everything, and I was kind of looking for the chief for him to bend the rules and say, well, we're going to let him, we're going to bypass this rule here. And I'm so glad that he didn't because I wouldn't be where I'm at today had that not happened.
And for the record, Chief doesn't bend the rules for anybody.
There you go. There you go.
But that's what I mean, that's
I mean, I'm
what
sure a
our
lot of
community,
people,
right?
come in thinking like,
Right.
well, he's my chief. He should do what I want him to do,
Exactly.
especially if he wants my vote.
That's right.
Oh, sorry.
Well, but that's, and unfortunately, so on that note, somebody asked me, I was on a Q&A panel in D.C., and I love sharing this story. They said, what's the greatest challenge facing tribal leaders today? And I said, to answer that question, you have to understand the history of tribal nations and how they were treated by the federal government. It's been a guardian ward, paternalistic system that's been in place for 150 or so years. And at some point, when self-determination came into play, the federal government basically said, okay, you tribes, go ahead and govern yourself. And I said, much like an abusive relationship, if you've been abused, you tend to do what was done to you. And so our elected officials, we in Indian country adopted the model that was imposed upon us. We abandoned our traditional ways, and we adopted the model that was imposed upon us, which is a paternalistic, you need me, I have control of the resources, and I'll divvy the resources out, and you keep me in my position of authority. And I said, so the biggest challenge facing elected officials today, tribal officials, is this. Am I going to perpetuate the paternalism, or am I going to empower my people? Now, a politician will perpetuate paternalism, a leader will empower the people. Understanding that there are some folks that don't want to be empowered or equipped. And that's kind of, like the fringe.
Yeah.
Can't do anything with them. You can continue to encourage them, help them all you can, but you cannot enable them. And, that's maybe not a popular message, but it's true.
Well, listen, Chief, you are a true leader.
Well, thank
and
you.
I'm grateful to have you on. I don't want to keep you too late.
Hey, can I
over
say
here.
something real quick?
Yeah.
So I know, earlier you said you grew up in the 60s and then,
I was a baby in the
Steve,
60s.
Yeah, I know,
Thank
right?
you.
well, no, let me point this out. So when we were in Oklahoma, they asked me where we were from, and I told them we're from the Eastern Band, and you guys are from where your chief has dark hair. Your chief's not white haired. I started laughing. Yeah,
Just
no,
for
it's
men.
not.
That's just for men.
That's exactly right.
That's true transparency right
That's
there.
right. Yep.
Should make you feel good.
I know. I'm 30, but I've been using it for a few years now, Chief, just for men.
Yeah,
I need to put a little bit on right now,
I
actually.
think I started hitting it when I was about 32 or 35, somewhere in there.
Hey, how's the fitness going?
Not as
kind
good
of-
as it used to be.
Kind of stuff you doing right now?
I did power cleans, squats, and bench last night. So,
Okay.
but not as good as you. I don't have time like I used to, And true story. Last night, I pulled up to the gym, and I was sitting in the parking lot, answered a couple text messages, and then I just kind of closed my eyes for a minute. And the next thing you know, I woke up. I'm like, oh my gosh, I fell asleep. I fell asleep in the parking lot of the gym. Like, I get in there and work out, man. I got my workout in. But yeah, I mean, I don't have. I mean, before I got into office, I mean, I was doing CrossFit 4 and 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the best shape of my life, and now I'm lucky if I can get 2. If I can get 2 days in, I'm happy. If I get 3, that's a great week.
What's the normal day look like in the Chief's life? here?
Meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, phone call, text message, meeting. I mean, it's, and so like next week we'll be in Raleigh. So we're going to go down there and lobby for sports betting, so we can get sports betting at our 2 casino properties. So we'll go lobby for that. We'll go and lobby NCDOT about some of these bridge projects that they want to do. And when they do these projects, our fiber, the tribe's part owner of Balsam West, our fiber, we own, miles and miles and miles of fiber. We have to pay to move the fiber. It's very expensive. So we're going to go and try to talk to NCDOT about that, if it's not a public safety issue, let's find a different project, because one of the greatest needs in Western North Carolina, one of the things that I've been able to get accomplished in office is the tribe's now a member of the Southwest Commission, which is the Council of Governments. So the regional county governments are all part of the Southwest Commission. So the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, as of 2018, is now a member of Southwest Commission. Almost without fail, every meeting, number 1 or number 2 issue of discussion, rural broadband access and housing. Top 2 issues for the region, every meeting. And so we're working hard through Balsam West and our partners to bring broadband access to Western North Carolina. And then we have NCDOT is like, hey, I know there's nothing wrong with this bridge, but let's change the traffic pattern because it would look nicer if we did this. And that ends up costing us a lot of money that we could be using to deploy broadband into communities we're going to have to use to pay for moving our fiber.
Getting that broadband to people is just vital at this day and age.
It's
right?
interesting. I spoke with some county commissioners and out in Graham County, because Graham County is that's a tough place to get it to, right? So we have fiber out there already, but there's not enough population out there for a large provider to come out and say, hey, we're going to blanket the area. So there's been some grants that have been awarded, but it's going to be a patchwork, you know. But in speaking to the county commissioners, you know, they're going around their horseshoe there, and everybody's talking about, you know, the need for broadband, and they said, well, Chief Sneed, you know, we'd like to hear from you. And I said, well, I was sitting back just listening to all of the comments, and it struck me how quickly our priorities have changed. If we were having this meeting 30 years ago, we would be discussing how vital it would be for us to get city sewer and city water into the communities. And now we're talking about broadband, and it is essential, especially I'll say this, it's essential if it's used appropriately. Granted, it's great for entertainment and everything else, and we probably spend more time using it for entertainment than for educational purposes. That being said, North Carolina is moving to paperless schools, right? So everything's going to be electronic. There's not going to be books anymore. Everything's going to be on tablets or laptops. Well, that's all fine, good and well if you're in Raleigh or Charlotte or Durham or you know, Winston-Salem. But most of, you know, probably 95 to 98 of the counties in North Carolina are rural. Yeah. You know, you've got these very densely populated areas around, you know, the metro areas of Raleigh-Durham and Charlotte and Winston-Salem, but everybody else is fairly rural. So it's a great initiative, but I think it's one of those things that it sounded great on paper, and yeah, let's roll that out, and it is good for the environment, but you have to have the infrastructure in place first. You can't, it's kind of been done backwards. It's like, let's do this, and here's the date we want to do it by, but the infrastructure's not in place.
Not there. Yeah, I have like a few classmates, single mothers, kids, that like don't have access to it, and they're students at SEC, so like they literally have to coordinate their entire schedule, picking up the kids and daycare and this and that around when what the library hours are at SEC, so they can spend the day at the library working on their homework.
Or sitting in the parking lot of McDonald's.
Or sitting,
using their Wi-Fi.
Yeah, for real.
Seriously, I mean, I know people who do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know people who do that.
Speaking of Raleigh, I guess it's probably the last thing we get to talk about, but Dr. Linger, who I spoke to you about, that's the director of RCNC, the Recovery Communities in North Carolina. She started the Hope Squad down there back in October, and went down there for some recovery coach training. I was telling you about it. It's a post-overdose outreach, and I really see a huge opportunity for us to have that. We have so many overdoses on the reservation. Once a month, they get the police reports. They take a detective who's a volunteer now. They don't get paid for it, so they get somebody that's had some training, some recovery language training, know how to empower people and stuff. And the detectives go into a place wherever the resident's at, check on them, walk in, make sure there's no drugs out. If there's drugs out, as long as it's not like trafficking weight, they tell them to put their stuff up. Can we send a recovery coach or a peer support to come here and talk to you? Yeah, you can. Go in and talk to them, give them some brochures about Anna Lanishki. Just sit there and listen to them. And I just seen
even information on the needle exchange, stuff like that. Yeah,
all that stuff, you know. And I feel like we're not doing enough outside the box, you know, ideas and programs. And I really think that it's a huge need for something like that.
I think we definitely have a lot of. There's a lot of people in recovery right now getting trained, like peer support training.
You've seen some of the numbers about how many people are certified peer supports that aren't working?
Yeah.
It's like...
I mean, it's very big, like Asheville, Raleigh, that way, but over here it's really not. But that, you know, that could be a place for people to at least get some
numbers are higher
work,
in the western counties than they are in the eastern counties.
I know.
You know? So...
Well, I think it's something that we should certainly look at adopting and you know, to your point about, you know, them going in, you know, and basically say, hey, can we talk? I think that one of the most important aspects of what we're doing right now, like I was talking to Vicki Bradley, our Secretary of Health and Human Services, and she said, you know, one of the local churches donates little boxes, and in the boxes they'll have boxes for women that will have healthcare products and feminine products and toothbrush and just, you know, personal care items, and then also boxes that just have like you know, like can of Beanie Weenies or, you know, just some crackers and stuff like that. And she said, we give them to them. And she said, more than anything else, they are so grateful that somebody cares, right? And I think what you're describing is, again, it's moving away from that punitive aspect and we're here to punish and you're a bad person to, hey, I'm here to help you. I recognize that you've got some issues going on right now, but I'm just here to listen. Because I think, you know, we would probably all of us would agree that you can't force somebody into recovery, right? It's got to be their decision. Certainly you can make the way easy for them, but at the end of the day, it's got to be their choice. And recognizing also that, especially when we're talking about folks who are addicted to heroin or meth, there's going to be relapses. You can't, you know, say, well, you had your chance. We've got to be there even when they fail, you know, and to pick them back up. So,
what do you think about that, though? I mean, because it really fosters a better relationship between the community and the police, you know, because.
And you say it like you're from the hood,
and
the police.
And the law
But
enforcement
it
officers.
breaks
Excuse
down
me.
those barriers, builds trust.
Well, I mean, that's what they're going to be saying. Oh, there's the police, you know.
I'll tell you what, if
That's how
you
we
will
talk
bring,
in front of the kids.
if you will bring, you know, a representative.
She's
from-
going to be here March.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Well, set up a
24th.
meeting.
Okay.
Set up a meeting with my office, and we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Outstanding.
Thanks a bunch, Chief.
Absolutely.
You are a
Thanks for
true
having
leader,
me.
man. Anything that we
Amazing.
can do to support recovery on the reservation, Res Hope, NC Raw, please feel free to reach out to us. We've got a slew of people who would be more than willing to volunteer for any type of program like that Caleb speaks of. So
Thanks. Well,
We
thank you.
should
Thanks for
try to
having
get
me
you
here.
back on here soon.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah, I've
have a
enjoyed
whole
it.
2-hour show.
Excellent. I could sit here and talk for 2 hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it, sir.
Thank
You're
you.
awesome. Let's hang out.
Appreciate
Let's
you.
grab a picture real quick. I'm gonna
Yeah.
wrap this thing up. Let's grab a picture.
Okay.
Thank you guys for tuning in.
Well,
Good night.
me with a good time.